Today is Friday, 18th of April, 2025. So we're carrying on the first chapter, Adi-lila, chapter 1. So we'll continue our reading in a moment. Agyantimirandasya Gyananjala Shalakaya Chakshu Unmilitam Jena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha Guruve Gauda Chandraya Radhikaya Tadaraye Krishnaya Krishna Bhaktaya Tadabhaktaya Namo Namaha Shri Caitanya Manobishtam Shtapitam Jena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Swapatantikam Priya Swarupe Daita Swarupe Prema Swarupe Sahajavi Rupe Nijana Rupe Prabhuveka Rupe Datana Rupe Swavilasa Rupe Anapita Chirim Chirat Kurunabharatinokalo Samadapaitam Unnata Ujvala Rasam Swabhakti Shriyam Haripurata Sundara Dikadam Basadipita Sada Hridare Kandare Swaratu Vasachinandanaha Yam Pravajantamana Petyam Apeti Krityam Dvaipaino Viraha Katara Ajuhava Putre Titam Mayatayo Taravo Binidustam Sarvabhutam Hridim Munimanatoshmi Bhaktiya Vihina Aparada Lakshay Shiptascha Karmadi Tarangamadye Kripa Maitvam Sharanam Prapana Brinde Namaste Charanadavindam Bhajami Radam Aravinda Netram Smarami Radam Madhurashmitasyam Vadami Radam Karuna Bharatram Tato Mamanastigati Nakapi Tavaivasmi Najivami Tvaivina Iti Vignaya Radhe Tvam Nayavam Charanantikam. I'm first of all offering millions of Dandava pranams unto the lotus feet of my beloved Gurudev, Adi-lila Pravishta Om, Asto Tadasdara Shishimad, Srila Bhaktivedanta Narayan Goswami Maharaj. And I'm offering the same again, millions and millions of times, unto the lotus feet of our beloved Adi-lila Pravishta Om, Asto Tadasdara Shishimad, Srila Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. And I'm offering the same again, millions of times, unto the lotus feet of our dearmost Srila Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami, and all our Rupanuga Guru Varga, and all the Vaishnava and Vaishnavi devotees of the Lord, my Dandavat pranams to all of you. Vanshakalpa Turubhyascha, Kripas Nindavevacha, Patitanam Pavanivyo, Vaishnavevyo, Namo Namaha. So, yesterday I stopped in the middle of a purport because it was a very lengthy purport, but we're coming quickly to the end of this first chapter, and I've been commenting on the structure of this chapter, which is just immaculate, the flow coming from Guru, spiritual masters, great discussion on spiritual masters. Without this platform, how can anything with any truth be established without the conclusive truth of Guru Tattva? But then we included Lord Brahma as the spiritual masters, the first living entity within this material world to manifest all the worlds, and what was his process of meditation, etc., and what are the 4 Chatushloki verses that he describes to Narad. And then Narad is going to describe to Vyasadeva. Vyasadeva is going to describe to Shukadeva Goswami. In other words, the spiritual masters' position initially, and then the Guru Parampara is coming in after that. And then Srila Krishnadas Kaviraj began to discuss Krishna Tattva. And because he's about to introduce Krishna himself in the form of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And we were saying yesterday that in this age, this is the Yuga avatar, is Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So it's only 500 years after Mahaprabhu's advent. So it does take time for the avatar's reality to manifest in this world. It's not just like immediately everyone's going to accept Mahaprabhu's teachings. So we saw at the beginning, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu had a small circle of intimate associates, parsads. And
they were not understanding all of the truths that Mahaprabhu was actually giving at that time. Very intimate realities about Parakiya Ras, etc. But Rupa Goswami and all the subsequent Goswamis, they have taken those truths and teachings and they've poured them out in the form of this Guru Parampara that we have, this line. So Srila Krishnadas Kaviraj, he's giving us the line after Lord Brahma also, which is our Guru Varga that we have today. And without being in this line or connected to the line, you won't have the mercy to understand these truths, because they're very confidential truths. And then he's begun to describe about Krishna and Balaram. And he's talked about this, we discussed yesterday, the Prakash and Vilas manifestations. These two different types of functions, we can say, of Krishna. The Prakash is when this is just Krishna directly himself, and the Vilas is the pastime potencies, or the pastime expansions of Krishna. So we discussed that a little bit, and then Srila Krishnadas Kaviraj begins more to describe about Krishna and Balaram in Vrindavan, and then Krishnadas Kaviraj, he quotes this beautiful verse from the first canto, second verse, this Dharma Projita Caitanya Paramo Nirmat Saranam Shatam. Very important verse. So Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada is opening this verse out with a quite lengthy commentary purport. So I was reading this purport yesterday. So we'll complete this purport and then conclude this chapter with glorification of Krishna and Balaram, manifesting then as Gaur-Nitai. And that'll be the whole cycle of this chapter. So I was in the middle, if you've got the same book, it's on page 91 in this book, of the commentary. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada was discussing these three paths that every living entity has an option to follow. The path of fruitive enjoyment, or karma kand, the path of gyan kand, which culminates in moksha, or the path of devotion. This is bhukti, mukti, or bhakti. These three paths he described. Now he's going to describe the path of demigod worship he's describing here. The path of worship of the innumerable devas, or administrative demigods, is still more hazardous and uncertain than the above mentioned process of karma kand and gyan kand. Even more hazardous if you take up to worshipping the demigods. Demigods are very powerful individuals. Vayudev, for example, when he actually ceased the element wind, it's all coming from Vayudev is that person who administrates the wind and all air. And there's a pastime when Hanuman, his son, was punched in the mouth by Indra's Raja weapon and broke his jaw. And Vayudev took Hanuman into a cave, and because he was very unhappy, he stopped all the winds in all the worlds, and everyone was choking to death because no wind was blowing. So all the demigods approached him and appeased him and benedicted Hanuman with so much mercy. But that's just one example. If the demigods decide not to perform their activities, they have a very, very responsible seva. This system of worshipping many gods, such as Durga, Shiva, Ganesh, Surya, and the impersonal Vishnu form. It's this impersonal Vishnu form that ultimately the demigods themselves are worshipping. They worship the Brahmajyoti. I said so many times, Brihaspati is described as Brahman realized. Is accepted by persons who have been blinded by an intense desire for sense gratification. Sense gratification means anything that I'm indulging my senses in. It's described as lust. It can be gross lust that the senses want to enjoy. It can be desire for food, desire for any type of material object separate from Krishna. This is lust. Karma esha, krodha esha, raja guna, samant braha. What's that? Mahashano mahapapma, vidi enam iha varinam. Varinam means enemy. The greatest enemy is this lust. The greatest single enemy in the material world is this lust. This is Mahashanu Mahapapa. Mahapapa. This Mahashanu is the greatest, most ferocious desire, and Mahapap is sinful. The greatest sinful desires, Mahashana Mahapap, are all embodied in this lust. And this is born from contact with the material mode of passion, and then turned into wrath, which is the all-devouring sinful enemy of the world. All-devouring sinful enemy of the world. This is 337. When properly executed in terms of rites mentioned in the Shastra, which are now very difficult to perform in this age of want and scarcity, such worship can certainly fulfill one's desires for sense gratification, but the success obtained by such methods is certainly transient, and it is suitable only for a less intelligent person. That is the verdict of the Bhagavad Gita. No sane man should be satisfied by such temporary benefits. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada is appealing to our higher intelligence. We need higher intelligence to understand there is something more than indulging our immediate senses. Rupa Goswami speaks exactly the same thing at the beginning of Upadeshamrita. Vacho Vegam, Manasakroda Vegam, Jiva Vegam, Udara Prastha Vegam. This controlling the mind, or controlling the tongue first, then the belly and the genitals. And then this controlling of the senses, absolutely essential. Without that, nothing can transpire. None of the above-mentioned three religious paths can deliver a person from the threefold miseries of material existence, namely miseries caused by the body and mind, miseries caused by other living entities, and miseries caused by the demigods, Adi-atmic, Adi-bhautic, and Adi-daivik, these three miseries. The process of religion described in Srimad Bhagavatam, however, is able to give its followers permanent relief from the threefold miseries. The Bhagavatam describes the highest religious form, reinstatement of the living entity in his original position of transcendental loving service to the Supreme Lord, which is free from the infections of desires for sense gratification, fruitive work, and the culture of knowledge with the aim of merging into the Absolute to become one with the Supreme Lord. So this devotional service we described the other day is the rahasya. It's the secret, it's the mystical ingredient. Simply by performing devotional service, all of these obstacles can immediately be melted away. Devotional service is so powerful. There can be all varieties of devotional service depending on your particular adhikar and situation. Chanting Hare Krishna is devotional service. Reading granthas is devotional service. Doing puja is devotional service. Serving Guru directly is devotional service. A myriad, distributing books, for example, is devotional service when it's under the order of Guru. If it's just distributing books for your own remuneration, then it's like arope siddha bhakti. There is some truth, there's something admirable in doing like that, but if you're taking all the Lakshmi for yourself, then it's arope siddha bhakti. Any process of religiosity based on sense gratification, gross or subtle, must be considered a pretentious religion because it is unable to give perpetual protection to its followers. The word progita in this verse, Dharma progita Caitapatra, the word progita is significant. Pra means complete, and ujita indicates rejection. Religiosity in the shape of fruitive work is directly a method of gross sense gratification, whereas the process of culturing spiritual knowledge with a view to becoming one with the Absolute is a method of subtle sense gratification. So both. This is why Dharma, Artha, Karma, Moksha are rejected. This moksha. And prior to Mahaprabhu, the religious path practically for all practitioners are these four methodologies: Dharma, Artha, Karma, Moksha. This is what they were following. All such pretentious religiosity based on gross or subtle sense gratification is completely rejected in the process of Bhagavad Dharma, or the transcendental religion that is the eternal function of the living being. We want to wake up our eternal function. The eternal function, the swadharma of the living entity, is to serve the Lord. That's its function. It's like the hand, for example. Its function is to serve the body. If the hand decides to be independent of that and wants to try to enjoy by itself, on its own, it'll just shrivel up. It'll be useless. There'll be no success in any way. But if it serves the body, the whole, then there's complete success of the function of the hand. Bhagavad Dharma, or the religious principle, did I read? No. Bhagavad Dharma, or the religious principle described in Srimad Bhagavatam, of which the Bhagavad Gita is a preliminary study, is meant for liberated persons of the highest order, who attribute very little value to the sense gratification of pretentious religiosity. Because Bhagavatam is training us to, first of all, it describes that Supreme Lord in great detail, all the different pastimes that are described. For example, Ajamil, chanting the holy name, was sufficient to attract the Vishnu Dutas and ultimately take him back to Vaikuntha. So many pastimes there. The pastimes of Prithu Maharaj, this Shaktivesh avatar, what he performed, the services on the planet, etc. So many. The pastimes of Lord Shiva, his great respectability, and how when he was dishonored in that sacrifice of Daksha, what led to that. So, and then the beautiful conversation between Vidura and Uddhav to begin in the 3rd canto. And then the conversation between Vidura and Maitreya, and what all the truths that Maitreya Rishi is imparting. And then Devahuti and Kapiladev, this Sangvad, in the end of the 3rd canto there. All the way through the whole Bhagavatam is substantiating the Supreme Personality of Godhead's position in the heart of the sincere sadhak. And then in the 10th canto, the Prayojan, the beautiful smiling moon-like face of the Lord, will be revealed. They serve the Supreme Lord only for his satisfaction. But devotees of Godhead have no such selfish desires. This is the real truth. We've been engrossed in the perversion for billions of lifetimes. So changing out of that perversion and coming to our real constitutional self, it's a big change. It can take 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 lifetimes, or it can happen in a moment, depending on our previous sukritis and sanskars. If we have those sanskars, then we can go very quickly. They serve the Supreme Lord only for his satisfaction. So Arjuna, wanting to satisfy his senses by becoming a so-called non-violent and pious man, at first decided not to fight. It seems very altruistic, very beneficial not to fight. Yes, he wanted to take this role, but Krishna said, no, this is not your dharma, number one, and number two, it's not what I want. So both of these things. But when he was fully situated in the principles of Bhagavad Dharma, culminating in complete surrender unto the will of the Supreme Lord. This is the culmination of Bhagavad Dharma, is Sharanagat. What is that last verse? Sarva Dharmam Parityaja, Mam Ekam Saranam Vraja, Aham Tam Sarve Papadyo, Mokshayishyami Masuchaha. Thus surrender unto me. Have no worries. I will protect you in all give up, abandon all other varieties of religion. This is practically the last verse of Bhagavad Gita, saying Sharanagat. Changed his position and agreed to fight for the satisfaction of the Lord. He then said, Nasto mohashmitir labda tvat prasadam mayuchyate stitosmi gata sandeha karisye vachanam tava. My dear Krishna, O infallible one, my illusion is now gone. I have regained my memory by your mercy. I am now firm and free from doubt and am prepared to act according to your instructions. How much bliss Arjuna must have experienced saying those words. Just completely giving up all his independent desires, hankerings, thoughts, and everything unto that Supreme Lord. What a relief to give up that independent baggage that we've carried for lifetimes. How much overwhelming with bliss is that experience? That's 1873, Bhagavad Gita. It is the constitutional position of the living entity to be situated in this pure consciousness. Any so-called religious process that interferes with this unadulterated spiritual position of the living being must therefore be considered a pretentious process of religiosity. Jivadharma, first chapter, maps this out very, very clearly. In the personification of Sannyasi Thakur, he's coming as an impersonalist, but he's been touched by association of the Vaishnavas, and he understands that the sweetness and speciality of this Bhagavad Dharma is higher than that Brahmagyan that he was pursuing. So that first chapter of Jivadharma explains the entirety of what we've been talking about. Actually, that first chapter is so powerful. It even explains about the purity of bhajan. When Sannyasi Thakur is sitting next to Babaji, Babaji has that spurti. Babaji is saying, silence the monkey Kakati. Ananga Manjari is looking, Lalita will be unhappy. So the whole parampara is immediately injected by Bhaktivinoda Thakur. Everything is there in that first chapter. The real form of religion is spontaneous, loving service to Godhead. If it's spontaneous, it means you've got to be traveling in 6th or 7th gear. Fully immersed. No even awareness of where is the foot brake or handbrake. You're just running. It's described by Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur. In Vaidhi Marg, the rules and regulations, we're calculating each step we take according to the vidhi, according to the rules and regulations. But in Raganuga, in spontaneous attraction, we run even without looking. We don't even look because we're assured of the support of Krishna. We're just running for his embrace, not even thinking of any sort of consequences. But in Vaidhi Marg, everything is calculated, and there's a fearful mentality there, that if you don't succeed, the sky will fall on your head or something. Understand? So this spontaneous, loving service to Godhead, this relation of the living being with the absolute personality of Godhead in service is eternal. So Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada is saying all this right in the beginning. If someone tries to say, oh, Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada wasn't talking about Raganuga Bhakti, it's right here in his first chapter of Caitanya Caritamrta. What to speak of further on? He's constantly referring to this. If we have the ears and heart and eyes to be wanting that, to be understanding that is the supreme gift of Mahaprabhu, Raganuga Bhakti. Premras Niryase Korite Ashvaran. This is why he came, to taste prem. But he came, Rag Mag Bhakti Loke Korite Prachan. He came to give this Raganuga Bhakti. He is the avatar of this age. And to neglect that is tragedy. The personality of Godhead is described as Vastu, or the substance. This is all described in the first chapter of Jayavadhamma. Vastu. 3 Vastus. Krishna, the Jiva, and Maya. Or the innumerable samples of the substance in relative existence. Or the innumerable samples of the substance in relative existence. So this means innumerable samples of Krishna's energy, which is the Maya Shakti and the Jiva Shakti. These are samples of Krishna's energy, of the substance. Krishna is that substance. Substance here is spelt with a capital S. Substance. In relative existence. So the Mayic potency is existing relatively. It's not eternal. When Mahavishnu breathes in, where is Maya Devi's active occupation? And where are the innumerable jivas at that time? So it's relative existence. You understand?
So in this, Jod Maya will not come. Only
No, the jivas at the time of annihilation, when they're back in the body of Mahavishnu, they are in a state called Yoga Nidra, where nothing is actually active. They're like unconscious state practically in that, because that's a long period of time. It's like at the end of Lord Brahma's night, the same thing happens. You go into this complete shutdown of all the senses totally. Yoga Nidra for 4,320,000,000 years. You're not aware of time passing. And then again the manifestation, the creation again arises. So all these different examples of time, for example, are absolutely fascinating. And they're all discussed in the 3rd canto by Maitreya Rishi. There's a whole chapter there. I think it's chapter 11 or 12 in the 3rd canto. No, not 11 I think it must be, or 10. About time. Substance. The relationship of these substantive portions of the Supreme Substance can never be annihilated. They can just become not active. They can never be annihilated. For it is an eternal quality inherent in the living being. The living being has these qualities inherently, even though he's shut down in this Yoga Nidra condition. Still, these qualities are eternal within him. They don't get lost. Understand? It's fascinating, isn't it? I'm fascinated by it. By contact with material nature, the living entities exhibit varied symptoms of the disease of material consciousness. So by contact with the material nature, some living entities are absolutely grossly involved up to their eyeballs. Others are standing back somewhat. They realize there's some other energy at work here. To cure this material disease is the supreme object of human life. What else is there to do? Once you know you're materially deficient, don't you feel natural enthusiasm to purify that state of consciousness and bring it back to your full, brimming, blissful consciousness? Brimming means full to the brim. Brimming consciousness. To cure this material disease is the supreme object of human life. The process that treats this disease is called Bhagavat Dharma, or Sanatana Dharma, real religion. This is described in the pages of Srimad Bhagavatam. Therefore, anyone who, because of his background of pious activities in previous lives, is anxious to hear Srimad Bhagavatam, immediately realizes the presence of the Supreme Lord within his heart and fulfills the mission of his life. Nasta Prayashu Abhadreshu, Nitya Bhagavatam, Sevatam. These verses in the second chapter of the first canto are describing, there's a whole string of very beautiful verses there, describing the glories of hearing this Bhagavad Gita. So now we come to text 92.
Dharamadye mokshavancha kaitava pradhan Yaha hoite Krishna bhakti hoya antardan.
The foremost process of cheating is to desire to achieve liberation by merging into the Supreme. For this causes the permanent disappearance of loving service to Krishna. That is a very, very powerful verse. My Gurudev said this to us once. We were all in Mathura, and I remember him saying it, and he was saying, yes, eternally, your opportunity to actually serve Krishna is cut. And we were all shocked. But then 3 or 4 days later, he said to us, actually, it is cut to such an extremity because of our desire to be desireless and to be in that Brahman consciousness. Brahma Bhuta Prasanatma na Sochati na Kanchati, without the second two lines, without that Labdate Param, without service to Krishna. But then he said, if some great sage, Narada Muni, Parvat Muni, come through these celestial airwaves, because at that time we're just like a tiny little spark in the Brahman, and if the dust from their lotus feet comes anywhere close to us, it can again ignite the desire in the heart to love. That is the first desire, to love. And I want to love, but I'm not sure which way to love. Should I place the object of my love on the Supreme, or the object of my love on me? This is the decision, sir. This is the tatashta. And then we have all come into this world because we were chasing the object of my happiness. Actually, Srila Bhakti Rakshak Maharaj, he said one time that more jivas go from the tatashta region straight back to Krishna. Not so many come here. Well, there's 8 billion or something. That's the human species. What to speak of all the other species on the planet? Ultimately, 8 billion, 640 million species. And then how many of those are there in each species? So it seems like a great overwhelming number from our tiny perspective. But from the perspective of the Brahman, it's minuscule. There are far more jivas in the spiritual world than there are in this small. Well, this is only one Brahman. The desire to merge into the impersonal Brahman is the subtlest type of atheism. Beautiful description. Subtlest type of atheism. I can't find Krishna anywhere. I have no honor in my heart to worship something more superior than myself. Isn't it? That's complete atheism. Dedicated atheism. As soon as such atheism, disguised in the dress of liberation, is encouraged, one becomes completely unable to traverse the path of devotional service to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. I made a comment a little while ago. I was staying with one person, and he had discovered the bliss of, he was following a path of Wim Hof breathing, deep breathing, a special type of breathing. And he had hit a transcendental place in his consciousness. And he lived with me for about 3 months. And every single day he was asking me about the Jiva and Krishna. And I was going through it again and again and again and again. Very nice person, very gentle, pure type of person. But he had found bliss in this Brahman. And he was doing this practice daily. And at the end of 3 months, he just gave his Japamala back to me, and all his books, and said, I don't need these anymore, and left. you know, because you can't get out of it once you get that bliss. It's very, very dangerous to practice those paths. Really. It's not our path. Because if a bliss is experienced, why would you want to come back into this world? Did the power go down? Text 93.
Prasabdena moksha bishandir api nirastaha.
The prefix pra in the verse from Srimad Bhagavatam, we're talking about Dharma projita, pra, this word pra, indicates that the desire for liberation is completely rejected. In Srimad Bhagavatam, this liberation is totally rejected. This is the annotation of Sridhar Swami. Understand this Sridhar Swami. Sometimes people in their ignorance think that this is referring to Bhakti Rakshak Sridhar Swami. Sridhar Swami was the great commentator of this Srimad Bhagavatam prior to Mahaprabhu. And Mahaprabhu would honor Sridhar Swami greatly. He was a great stalwart Vaishnava commentator. The great commentator on Srimad Bhagavatam is like the principal commentator. Text 94.
Krishna bhakti paduka yata sabhusubha karma seha eka jivera agyan tamo dharma.
I didn't say that with the right meter.
Krishna bhakti paduka yata sabhusha karma sahe eka jivera agyan tamo dharma.
All kinds of activities, both auspicious and inauspicious, that are detrimental to the discharge of transcendental loving service to Lord Krishna are actions of the darkness of ignorance. Very beautiful. The poetical comparison of Lord Chaitanya and Lord Nityananda to the sun and moon are very significant. The living entities are spiritual sparks, and their constitutional position is to render devotional service to the Supreme Lord in full Krishna consciousness. So-called pious activities and other ritualistic performances, pious or impious, thank you, John, Dandavat pronounced, as well as the desire to escape from material existence, that's liberation, are all considered to be coverings of these spiritual sparks. No inverter?
Inverter hai?
Down. The living entities, okay. The living entities must get free from these superfluous coverings and fully engage in Krishna consciousness. The purpose of the appearance of Lord Chaitanya and Lord Nityananda is to dispel the darkness of the soul. The darkness of the soul. That's why they call the sun and the moon rising. Before their appearance, all these superfluous activities of the living entities were covering their Krishna consciousness. But after the appearance of these two brothers, people's hearts are becoming cleansed, and they are again becoming situated in the real position of Krishna consciousness. He uses the word becoming. It's a process to actually achieve complete perfection. We are all in process. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada used to say, we're in the bath, we're in the shower, we're getting cleaned. That hasn't actually fully taken place yet, but we're performing the process. We're not on the liberated platform anymore. We're not in Karma Kand or Gyan Kand. We've out of there. We're in the devotional track, but it's a process.
Yanhara prasade e tamo haya nasha, tamo nasha kari kare tatvere prakasha.
By the grace of Lord Chaitanya and Lord Nityananda, this darkness of ignorance is removed and the truth is brought to light.
Tattvavastu Krishna Krishna Bhakti Prema Rupa Nama Sankirtana Shava Ananda Swarupa.
The absolute truth is Sri Krishna, and loving devotion to Sri Krishna exhibited in pure love is achieved through congregational chanting of the holy name, which is the essence of all bliss. So he's giving the clear Abhidheya now. Text 97. Surya Chandra Bakire Tamase Vinashe Bahir Vastu Gatapata Adise Prakashe. The sun and moon dissipate the darkness of the external world and thus reveal external material objects like pots and plates. Text 98. Dui Bai Hridaya Shali Adarkara Dui Bhagavata Sange Karana Shakshatkara. But these two brothers, Lord Chaitanya and Lord Nityananda, dissipate the darkness of the inner core of the heart, and thus they help one meet the two kinds of Bhagavats, persons or things in relation to the Supreme Absolute. Text 99. Eka Bhagavata Bada Bhagavata Shastra Ara Bhagavat Bhakta Bhaktirasa Patra. One of the Bhaktas is the great scripture Srimad Bhagavatam, and the other is the pure devotee absorbed in the mellows of loving devotion. So two Bhagavats, the Bhagavat Shastra and the Bhagavat Bhakta. Due Bhagavata Dvara Diya Bhakti Rasa Tanhara Hridaye Tanra Prema Hoyavasa. Through the actions of these two Bhagavats, the Lord instills the mellows of transcendental loving service into the heart of a living being, and thus the Lord, in the heart of his devotee, comes under the control of the devotee's love. So we've said before that the entire spiritual dimension is only abounding, filled with love and sweetness. Eka Adbhuta Samakale Donhara Prakasha Ara Adbhuta Chitta Guraha Tamakare Nasha. The first wonder is that both brothers appear simultaneously, and the other is that they illuminate the innermost depths of the heart. Text 102. E Chandra Surya Dui Parama Sadaya Jagatera Bhagya Gauda Karila Udaya. These two, the sun and moon, are very kind to the people of the world. Thus, for the good fortune of all, they have appeared on the horizon of Bengal. Purport. The celebrated ancient capital of the same dynasty, which is known as Gaudadesh or Gauda, was situated in what is now the modern district of Malda. Malda is north. After north. Later, this capital was transferred to the 9th or central island on the western side of the Ganges at Navadvip, on the western side of the Ganges. That's Navadvip today, which is now known as Mayapur and was then called Gaudapur. Lord Chaitanya appeared there, and Lord Nityananda came there and joined him from the district of Birbhum. They appeared on the horizon of Gaudadesh to spread the science of Krishna consciousness, and it is predicted that the sun and moon gradually move west. The movement they began 500 years ago will go to the Western civilizations by their mercy. So this was in the east, so to speak, but it's moving to the west, and that is what Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada is commenting on here. Will come to the Western civilization by their mercy. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and Nityananda Prabhu drive away the 5 kinds of ignorance of the conditioned souls. In the Mahabharata, Udyoga Parva, 43rd chapter, these 5 kinds of ignorance are described. They are accepting the body to be the self, making material sense gratification one's standard of enjoyment, being anxious due to material identification, 4, lamenting, and 5, thinking that there is anything beyond the absolute truth. So these are 5 kind of ignorance that can be compared to those 5 coverings I described the other day of Lord Brahma. You can make the parallels. The teachings of Lord Chaitanya eradicate these 5 kinds of ignorance. Whatever one sees or otherwise experiences, one should know to be simply an exhibition of the Supreme Personality of Godhead's energy. Everything is a manifestation of Krishna. So we say the heat and the fire are the same in this sense. The fire is like Krishna and the heat is his Shakti. It's actually the heat that's making all the difference. That the heat, the Shakti, is what everything is manifesting from. So he's saying an exhibition of the Lord's energy, Shakti. Everything is Shakti Parinamvad, not Vastu. Vastu is the original Krishna transforming. All the Sampradayas prior to Mahaprabhu thought that it was Krishna who was transforming into all the worlds. Mahaprabhu, he substantiated this Parinamvad, this Shakti. Parinam means transformation. So it's Shakti that is transforming. Swarup Shakti, ultimately. When we see the map of Parashakti, we have one map, and it has all manifestations. Sandini, Sangvit, Hladini, all coming from Swarup Shakti.
Se dui prabhokare charana vandan, yanhara hoite vigna nasha abhista puran.
Let us therefore worship the holy feet of these 2 lords. Thus one can be rid of all difficulties on the path of self-realization. Text 104.
E dui shloke kaila mangala vandan, tritya shlokera atta sunat sarvagyan.
I have invoked the benediction of the Lords with these 2 verses, texts 1 and 2 of this chapter. Now please hear attentively the purport of the 3rd verse. Text 105.
Vaktyaiva bahulya granta vistare dare, vistare navarni sarta kahi alpaksare.
I purposely avoid extensive descriptions for fear of increasing the bulk of this book. I shall describe the essence as concisely as possible. Now there's a very beautiful verse here. It's text 61, just one line.
Mitram cha sharam cha vacho I vigmita iti.
This is translated as essential truth, spoken concisely, is true eloquence. We should always bear that in mind. You don't have to speak for hours. You just give the essential truths. That's all that's actually required. I'll read it again. Essential truth, spoken concisely, is true eloquence. That's verse 106 of the 1st chapter. Very beautiful verse. Verse 107.
Sunile kanipe chitra agnadi dosha, Krishna kara prema habe hoibe santosha.
Simply hearing submissively will free one's heart from all the faults of ignorance, and thus one will achieve deep love for Krishna. This is the path of peace. Again, it's like the verses from the Bhagavat in the 2nd chapter, 1st canto. Nasta Bhagavata Prayeshu Nityam Bhagavata Svevaya. These verses are Naistiki, yes, these beautiful verses are there. You can look those verses up. They are. I'll just look up quickly. Nasta. Yes. Bhagavata Sevaya. 1.11. To say those verses. Actually, our Padmanabha Maharaj, he knows this whole run of beautiful verses. Oh yes, we started with Narayana Namaskrityam Naram Chaiva Narottamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayat Udirayat. This is saying before reciting this Bhagavatam, which is the very means of conquest, one should offer respectful obeisances unto the personality of Godhead, Narayan. So Krishna's Kaviraj is following the same process. The Nasta Prayashu Abhadarishu Nityam Bhagavata Seva Bhagavati Uttamashloka Bhakti Bhavati Naishtika. This is saying by regular attendance on classes on the Bhagavat and by rendering service to the pure devotee, all that is troublesome to the heart is almost completely destroyed, and loving service unto the Supreme Personality of Godhead is praised with transcendental songs, is established as an irrevocable fact. So these are beautiful verses from the Bhagavat, and Srila Krishna's Kaviraj Goswami is reflecting these verses here.
Shri Chaitanya Nityananda Advaita Matva Tanra Bhakta Bhakti Nama Prema Rasa Tattva Vinay Vinay Likyachi Koriya Vichar Sunile Janibe Sabat Vastu Tattva Sar. If one patiently hears about the glories of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, Sri Nityananda Prabhu, and Sri Advaita Prabhu, and their devotees, devotional activities, names, and fame, along with the mellows of their transcendental loving exchanges, one will learn the essence of the absolute truth. Therefore, I have described these in Caitanya Caritamrta with logic and discrimination. I just want to read those again. If one patiently hears about the glories of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, the glories of Nityananda Prabhu, and the glories of Advaita Prabhu, and their devotees, Srivas, etc., devotional activities, Sankirtan, names and fame, along with the mellows of their transcendental loving exchanges, one will learn the essence of the absolute truth. Therefore, I have described these in the Caitanya Caritamrta with logic and discrimination. So as I said in the very beginning, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati said, if you throw all the granthas into the ocean, but you retain this Caitanya Caritamrta, nothing will be lost. Everything in essence is here in this Caitanya Caritamrta. So text 110. Shri Rupa Raghunath Padayara Ash Chaitanya Mrita Kahe Krishna Das.
Now, Krishna's Kaviraj concludes every chapter with this same verse. Very important. Praying at the lotus feet of Sri Rupa and Raghunath, always desiring their mercy, I, Krishna Das, narrate Sri Chaitanya Caritamrta, following in their footsteps. The mercy of Rupa Goswami was entering the heart of Raghunath Das. Raghunath Das had come from 14 years in Puri, listening to Swarup Damodar give the teachings from Mahaprabhu into the heart of Raghunath Das. When he comes to Vrindavan with the intention of committing suicide because all the associates have left this world, we can't imagine the feeling of separation he was experiencing. He was going to jump from Govardhan Hill. But instead he met Rupa and Sanatan, who convinced him that he had a great seva to do now to Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. He had to write the glories of Mahaprabhu's inner mission. Raghunath Das is the Prayojan Acharya. Gopinath is that Prayojan Thakurji. So Raghunath Das, he's giving us Vilap Kusmanjali. He's giving us Mana Shiksha. He's giving us this Stavamala, which is a beautiful compilation of worshipping all the inhabitants of Vrindavan. There's 107 different personalities that he's glorifying and offering obeisances to. The trees, the bushes, the bees, the rivers, the devotees, the mountains, so many aspects of Braj he's offering, and the different personalities, Madhumangal, the Sakas, the Sakis, all these personalities he's glorifying in a very sublime, beautiful way. So this was the glorification that Raghunath has received from Rupa. So Rupa Goswami is the top of the line. And he's giving this same injection into the heart of Raghunath, which is already sanctified with the sweetness of Swarup Damodar. Swarup Damodar, of course, is Lalita Sakhi. But she's seeing everything from Sakhi vision. It's not the same as from Manjari vision. Rupa Goswami is Rupa Manjari. Raghunath Das is Rati Manjari. This vision is different to Sakhi Bhav. Sakhi Bhav was not what Mahaprabhu came to give this world. He didn't come to give Sakhi Bhav. He came to give the living entity Manjari Bhav. This is the beauty of Radha. Swa Bhakti Shriyam. This is what he came to give. So, praying at the lotus feet of Sri Rupa and Raghunath, always desiring their mercy, I, Krishnadas, narrate Sri Caitanya Caritamrta, following in their footsteps. So we're practically out of time. So I'll just read the introduction to chapter 2, so we know where we're going on Monday. We have time for this now. So chapter 2, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So see what Srila Krishnadas Kaviraj has built. He's built a beautiful, firm foundation, coming through Krishna Tattva, through Guru Tattva initially, extensively, then Krishna Tattva, then Krishna and Balaram, and finally Mahaprabhu. And now he's going to describe Mahaprabhu. This chapter explains that Lord Chaitanya is the Supreme Personality of Godhead himself. Therefore, the Brahman effulgence is the bodily luster of Lord Chaitanya, and the localized supersoul situated in the heart of every living entity is his partial representation. The Purush avatars are also explained in this connection. Mahavishnu is the reservoir of all conditioned souls, but as confirmed in the authoritative scriptures. Lord Krishna is the ultimate fountainhead, the source of numerous plenary expansions, including Narayan, who is generally accepted by Mayavad philosophers to be the absolute truth. We'll discuss this. The Lord's manifestation of Prabha or Vaibhav expansions, as well as partial incarnations and incarnations with delegated powers, that's like Shakti-Vaisha avatars, are also explained. Lord Krishna's ages of boyhood and youth are discussed, and it is explained that his age at the beginning of youth is his eternal form, his Kishore age, Navakishore age. The spiritual sky contains innumerable spiritual planets, the Vaikunthas, which are manifestations of the Supreme Lord's internal energy. Innumerable material universes are similarly exhibited by his external energy, and the living entities are manifested by his marginal energy. Because Lord Krishna Chaitanya is not different to Lord Krishna, he is the cause of all causes. There is no cause beyond him. He is eternal and his form is spiritual. Lord Chaitanya is directly the Supreme Lord Krishna, as the evidence of authoritative scriptures prove. This chapter stresses that a devotee who wishes to advance in Krishna consciousness must have knowledge of Krishna's personal form, his three principal energies, his pastimes, and the relationship of the living entities with him. This is exactly the same which is almost described in the first chapter of Jivadhamma, also described. So this is a synopsis of chapter 2, which will begin on Monday, next Monday. That'll be the 20th of February. Huh? 21st of April. Yes. So Sri Chaitanya Caritamrta ki jai. Go Premanam. Hari Hari Bol. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama. Nitai Gaura Haribol, 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 Gaura Haribol. Nitai Gaura Haribol, 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 Gaura Haribol, Gaur Prati, Hari Haribol. Vancha Kalpa Tarubhyascha, Kripa Siddhavebhya, Patitanam Pavnibhyo, Vaishnavebhyo, Namo Namaha.